choosing the right agency is essential to completing your business goals. Like anything, financial considerations will come into the mix. So we'll be looking at budgeting, the way agencies can invoice you, the best practices around invoicing, the best practices around media, and then other financial considerations around this. When you're in the flow with the agency, we're going to look at optimum ways of working. Now, this will include what we really, really want, which is getting the best out of your agency, how to build that relationship, how to drive things forward, that their thoughts are your thoughts, and you're both pushing towards the same collaborative goal. From that, and it does happen in relationships, we'll start looking at identifying problems. What might be an issue that might raise a red flag? Things to just be aware of. You might want to push back on, hopefully work out with the agency, and then rebuild that trust and relationship should things go anywhere that you don't want. Apologies. Following on from that, and this is key, setting expectations. Now, this is expectations in terms of the business relationship as well as the briefing process. So we have to remember through all of this, the agency is working for you as part of a business relationship. They hope to be paid. They want to be paid. This is their driving motivation. Yes, they want to win awards and work and do great work, but ultimately they do want to be paid. So you have to always remember something has to be in it for them. So setting the expectations around that. Finally, we're going to move to our agency checklist. Now, this is a checklist that I've put together over the years where there's a certain number of questions you should ask an agency as standard. This is something you guys can take away with you. It's applicable to any agency situation, and it's a good ballpark to understand how you can work best with your agency. Now, before we proceed any further, I just want to say that this, for the people on the course from agencies, from clients, this will be beneficial for everyone because hopefully you'll see both sides of the arrangement, how they work together, and work out best practices between yourselves and your clients, and just the thinking behind all of that. As we move on, I'm just going to take a look at the three main stakeholders of this digital media world. So as you can see, or as you soon see on the slide, we've got three main people that are considered part of the mix here. We've got the client. These are the people who have the budget. We've got the agency. These are the people who manage the client's campaigns and expectations and deliver it on media to ultimately connect with that consumer. So using an agency does allow clients to access large media platforms. Agencies have a large pool of clients. They can pool the resources together and give you access to platforms that you may not normally have. So what the agency does is it's a bridge between you, a client at, I suppose, different financial stages, giving access to far bigger resources that you wouldn't be able to afford on your own. So the three main stakeholders of the agency relation and agency client relationship are client, agency, and media. Now, I'm just going to quickly move on to our next section, which is reasons to work with an agency. There are many reasons to work with an agency, but these are, I suppose, the most effective, and we're going to take a look in at these reasons specifically. The first reason is you have instant access to expertise and tools. So the thing about agencies is they're flexible and experienced at adapting to all kinds of business challenges. They work with a host of clients. It can take years and cost a lot of money for you to train the people up to the adequate level in-house. What agencies can do, as I said, is pool their revenue streams together, buy tools across a number of clients, and you can get access to this. That is an incredibly powerful access medium to a lot of, I suppose, intelligence and strategic ability that you wouldn't normally have. The other thing is, it's new ways of thinking. So you do get fresh insights. When you're close to your business, you sometimes miss, I suppose, some strategic opportunities, but an agency will see your business in a different way. They'll see your propositions in a different way, and they'll see your audience and your challenges in a different way. All of these things can lead to better thinking, fresher insights, and optimized approaches to new opportunities in the digital world, in the commercial world. The thing about this is, what I'm really striving towards is the purest and the most effective relationships you have with an agency is a collaborative relationship. So when you're working towards that relationship over time, you will see it develop in new thinking. And even though they're working with you, they still are a third party, so they can bring that freshness in. Now, financial considerations are something that we do always consider when we're working with agencies or indeed anything in the commercial world. The scalability of service allows you, the budget holder, the business, to develop at scale and bring your agency along with you, because of the fact that you may not have the requirement for a lot of hours or a lot of people at the start. You can buy the required number of hours in the beginning with that agency, and as you develop, as your business grows, you can start latching more on. So the scalability of an agency relationship is fantastic, because as you grow incrementally, you can increase your agency resource. And if there was anything that did happen, good, bad, or indifferent, to your business itself, you can downsize where appropriate. The best thing in this situation, and this is from my own experience working in agencies and with clients, is if you do have to kind of pull back on any kind of hours or budgeting or alignment with the agency, brief them in, loop them in, and the two of you need to sit down and work towards, an outcome that will hopefully, return the business back to its former glory or whatever it is. But what you need to do is loop people in rather than just pulling the plug, because it is an important relationship. You are working together, but the scalability of service, just to reiterate that point, is incredibly powerful, because as you grow, they grow. And as you decline, if that happens, you can pull back. You're not committed to having an FTE, which is a full-time employee, sitting there, not having something to do. The agency grows with you, which naturally leads us on to the point about it being cost effective. So because you're only committing to maybe a certain number of hours per month, it allows you to prioritize your tasks and not expand the role of a full-time employee into non-priority or non-core marketing functions. Whereas with your agency, you will focus solely on the work that they're going to deliver you, prioritized by the budget that you have allocated to it. So you're not wasting. It's very trim. It's an incredible way to get the most out of digital marketing expertise and tools in a purely allotted way. So there are many reasons to work with an agency, many beyond these 4 reasons indeed, but these will be 4 high priority reasons for working with an agency. Now, at this point, I just want to say that for anyone who's doing CPD or anything with our membership, you will be sent and downloaded a certificate of attendance. And because you sat through the entire hour and learning from this, there is 1 credit allocated to your CPT as a result of this. So I'll reiterate this at the end, and it will all be included in the email. Moving on from why working with an agency, it's a very, I suppose, important consideration around how to choose the best agency. So this is where you do your due diligence. This is where you put the groundwork in to understand who exactly you want to work with. Who is it? What are their skill sets? Etc. And I'll go through these different points here. So let's just dive into the slide here, and we'll see how exactly we can, or pointers for choosing the right agency. The first one that really needs to begin the entire process is understanding your needs and your available budget. Again, I want to reiterate this. Agencies enter a commercial agreement, a commercial arrangement with a client, because ultimately they're going to benefit financially from the amount of hours that they bill you. So understanding what you can achieve with that budget, does that align to your needs, and does that align with the type of agency you want to work with? So explaining what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve allows the agency, who are very experienced at this, to match their skill set to your needs. It also allows you to work with suitably specialized agencies. You will find there might be an agency that specializes in paid search or in social media content production or in SEO or different channels, strategy, whatever that may be. Working with specialist houses can be defined by your budget and their costs, because we do find that the more specialist a house is, they tend to have different fee structures. So understanding what your needs are, what your budget available is, because you do want to hire the right agency for the job. Now, being transparent with your budget allows the agency to show you what they can deliver for that budget, which in short terms is actually, it's what's in it for them. Because I know we're winning awards and we're doing great work and all of that, but we can't forget this fee piece. Agencies are in it for that, and to assume or to skirt around budgeting is never good practice when it comes to working with an agency. Be transparent, be open. It's a business arrangement. Talk about budgets, talk about where it's going and what it's doing, and understand that budget, and I'll try and align that with the needs that you want to do. If you're having difficulty, we can prioritize, you can line item different things, you can pick and choose what from a menu of different items could be achieved within that budget. But ultimately, the budget says it all. That is the starting point, and I suppose the final point of what you can achieve with the agency in most cases. Of course, they will do, additional hours here and there, but generally it's best practice to try and avoid that stuff. And I will talk about that a little bit later. A great point, a really great point for understanding the value and the effectiveness of an agency is to evaluate their staff numbers and their skill levels. So an agency, you have to remember, is an instant marketing department. So you have to understand what kind of resources they can offer for different fee levels, whether it's marketing director level, an executive level down the bottom, or somewhere in the middle in the account manager level. What exactly does this look like? Does this meet the expectations? In an ideal world, and certainly after the onboarding period, you don't want to have a situation where you have a lot of high-level director types on your account doing the day-to-day, because the hours that you'll invest in directors will be could be a lot better utilized, investing that in people who are lower down the skill set scale, because what they'll be doing is they'll be twisting the dials and pulling the levers on your account. They'll be doing the day-to-day work on your account. Executives and high strategists tend not to do the day-to-day activities of your account. So having the structure in a reverse pyramid at the start, where you have a lot of people in high fee areas at the top, putting the strategy together, which may only need a refresh every quarter, every half year, or indeed every year, to a model where you have maybe an account director as a point of contact, but below them you will have a number of account managers or execs or whatever that may be, because the ground staff, the people that do the heavy lifting of the day-to-day activities of an account, tend to be executives and juniors, not senior people. So moving towards that after onboarding is an essential, I suppose, change task of any kind of agency onboarding period. But and I just want to reiterate this point about evaluating staff numbers and skill levels. A good point that you sometimes see within agencies is, are they growing or are they losing clients? So if someone's growing, yes, they're clearly doing something right. It's a clear indication they're getting more business. People are coming in, they want to be worked with. However, if they're losing clients or if they're downsizing, that might be a red flag. It might not be a red flag, but it might be a red flag that there could be difficulties within the agency. It's an important point to consider. Now, the next point is something I always include in an RFP, which is what do you believe is your core USB or strength? So this is not the strength that you read on the website that is, people, power, resilience, all of these buzzwords. It is what they believe their core proposition is for you and your business. So it's the adapted value proposition to you, not the strap line. If that resonates with what you're looking for and you can sense that, check that against your expectations, well, that's certainly a good sign in your prospecting for an agency itself. So ask them what they believe is their core strength or USP. The second last point here is around awards. Awards are a good indicator of success, but they're not always the best indicator of success. They look great, people have a night out and everything like that, but ultimately it is the industry congratulating the industry on work within the industry. So it sometimes needs to be taken with a pinch of salt. Find out what the awards refer. Does it relate to what you want to achieve? And does it look like the type of project that you would like to be involved in. It may not have to be the same industry, but ideally the award should be relevant to you. My last point here is around researching their clients, globally, locally, and any industry specialisms. We had mentioned, can you afford certain specialist agencies? Does their experience, does their skill set feed into what you're actually looking for on a global, local, and industry level? It's a good indicator of how to choose the right agency. Quick summary, understand your needs and budget available, evaluate their staff and their skill levels, ask them what they believe their USP or core strength is. Awards aren't always the best indicator of agency performance, and certainly do some research around their clients. That definitely helps in choosing the agency itself. So we're going to move on to financial considerations, which really is a very important part of all of this activity. And we're going to talk about fee structures here. So fee structures are how the agency are paid, what they invoice you, and there's two main methods for fee structures. The first one is, and ideally the preferred one, is management time. They're paid by the hour. You buy 25 hours of their expertise per month, or grow or reduce that as you see fit. The other way to get paid is percentage of media. The difference between the two is fees are generally better suited to performance, as the agency is encouraged to put time and effort into your campaign, while the other way, they get paid the more media they spend. So regardless of how good, bad, or indifferent the media is being spent, they get paid. If they spend a lot, they get paid a lot. That may not be the right strategy, so the hours option is generally better. Now, it's also important to look at what is your available budget after media and production costs, because that's what your fees are going to be. You need to work with the agency to understand what can be achieved by your budget. So you need to sense check by looking at previous campaigns and ask for justification. Transparency is essential here. Ask for the justification of the hours and the line items and the deliverables. The people who are going to be on the account, see, does that tot up? Does it meet your expectations? Agencies are expensive. There is no doubt about it. But transparency and proving that the production costs are there and the agency fees are justifiable is essential. Remember, we work in a digital world. Digital worlds are highly metric based. When you can sense check a forecasted return against the hours allotment, you can predict a reasonable ROI. And if that is within the threshold of what you expect to get from that level of investment in terms of media, in terms of production, and in terms of agency fees, does that look good? Can you pull back? Can you optimize here and there without cutting the entire budget apart? But budget slicing is something that does generally need to happen in the early days before you scale. Another thing to always ask is how often you invoiced, because that does represent your sales cycle and your cash flow. It's important to understand how often you will be invoiced by the agency, if they will be paying the media and you have 30 days credit on top of that, or you'll be paying the media. So these are important considerations for managing cash flow. Basic contract stuff would be, what's the contract duration? Are there break clauses? Now, the other thing you can include in a contract is an SLA. An SLA is your service level agreement. An SLA is your expectations. It's what the agency have signed up to. Including that in the contract allows you to refer to your expectations, the deliverables, the things that during the pitch that were agreed upon. It's perfect. It's not doing anything other than firming up the business relationship and setting the boundaries. So it drives accountability between the relationship. And if it's maybe a high contract deal or a high value contract, you might want to put in things like any kind of penalties for missing SLAs by a significant amount and what that threshold is. So this really keeps everyone aligned, everyone on their toes, and everyone working towards the same agreed service level agreement at the start. So consider putting SLAs in your contract. A contract gives the agency the trust that, the business is going to last a certain period, and putting the SLAs in allows you to understand what they're going to deliver over that period. So the trust is solidified. It might seem a little bit pedantic, but it can be a very powerful tool for just making everyone assured that the relationship is going to actually go somewhere. Now, the final point I have in here is transparency around costs, outputs, and investments. So this kind of relates to what is the available budget and production costs. So things like time trackers, phone calls, what is a billable hour? You need to understand what a billable hour is. And I suppose the best way to look at a billable hour, it differs from client to client and agency to agency. But if you are the client and you ask the agency for a report or a meeting where they'll go through the strategy for next year, or if you have asked them to do something that you can extract value from in that instance, that is generally a billable hour. So it might be a meeting where you're talking about a report. It might be a quarterly business review, an annual business review. It could be a dashboard they put together. Things like scoping new business or understanding, loosely what ideas could be achievable next year. That's generally not considered billable hours, but it may be different between you and the agency. I would explore that with your agency to see what constitutes billable hours and just to understand that. And prep work and work on the phone and meetings, when you're extracting value, tend to count as billable hours. And it's important to note that and not assume that stuff happens for free, because there are people there putting hours, putting minutes in to do work. So, it is a commercial agreement with you and the agency. Understanding what a billable hour is essential. But as we all want, we do want to get the best out of our agency. So I'm going to look deeply into this slide here, where we can see I had alluded to this once or twice in the previous slides. It's moving towards that consultative partnership relationship model. So the old days of the agency just being a third-party executor is far less common these days. So try to include your agency in your plans where you can, because they are an extension of your marketing department. Their goals ideally should be your goals. They need to acquire an intrinsic, an innate understanding of your business challenges. If they understand your challenges, they know what the budget is, they know how to talk, they're able to give you the right ideas, the right perspective, using the tools and expertise they have in-house to deliver the best possible results for you. So that consultative partnership is important. Yeah, it might require signing an NDA or ensuring they don't work with competitors for a period of time in a contract break or whatever. There's certain things you can put in place to ensure that no data is brought across, etc. But the partnership model is very effective. And a lot of this is from client side. So understanding with the agency lead time and dependencies when briefing is very important. So it does take time. It takes time for the agency to create assets, to do web builds, to put campaigns together, to do strategy documents, to research the audience, to do all of those things. Doing it at the drop of the hat, while it might seem really important to you, may not always work for their workflow. You have to remember that they are an organization that does have people, that does have structures and processes. They are a commercial organization. They equally have other clients to serve. So ask them, ideally in the early days and as it develops over time, what is the lead time that you require for certain key pointers that might be happening within the account? What does it take to build a paid search campaign? What does it take to build a suite of web banners? A web build on WordPress versus a web build on Magento. Try to understand what the different lead times are for the different main jobs, main activities that you might be doing with the agency, as per the contract, as per their recommendations. So that allows them to manage their workload and ensure that everything is kind of working and you're not putting them under too much pressure. From time to time, and it does happen, from time to time, you will just have to have a 24-hour turnaround, 48-hour turnaround. High frequency of those can sometimes put strain on the relationship that you have built up with the agency. So being aware of too many high pressure requests, not scoped out correctly, against lead times, not being trafficked in, can really put strain on an agency relationship. And what it does do, and this is a great thing for us as clients, is when you are forced to think about lead times, it forces you to plan ahead. It forces you to map out your year, your month, your quarter, whatever it is, and put in all of the high impact elements, prioritize them, including the lead time, including the dependencies. Your project planning will become far more successful by working with and working off the lead times and required dependencies with that agency. So a lot of additional stuff can come in out of that dependency piece. When they do something good, when an agency does something good, it's important to say that was great, not just a wait for the award ceremony that year, you know. And accountability is also a problem. If there was an issue, certainly letting them know what the issue was and how it should be addressed. So providing feedback on success levels is quite important. So as I said, it's easy to scold or blame your agency for mistakes, but it's important to treat people fairly. It's important to give an understanding that if they are at fault at something, what can you learn from that experience and what can they learn from that experience? So there is always outputs from any kind of mistake that may have happened on either side, to avoid repeating such mistakes in the future by building that into your process. Equally, when they are successful, let them know. It's important to give fair feedback, good and bad, because that sets the expectations. It also sets the boundaries, and it builds mutual success and trust between you and the agency partners that you will be working with. My last point here, again, and I do labor this one, is pay for time and avoid burning hours or wasting hours. So if you brief something into an agency and, you know, on the promise that on execution they will get, you know, reimbursed for it, but it may not happen, you may need to come to an agreement where you pay for the time that they put into putting the document presentation together. It's about fairness, because when you, the client, say, hey, agent, do something, they're going to do it because that is what their function is. So if at any point you kind of cut that off and decide not to pay, that can have a really, really straining relationship, it's a straining effect on the relationship. Likewise, looking for heavily discounted fees can also kind of put a strain in the relationship. And what can happen is, and this is where it can feed into kind of poor outputs, is the agency will ultimately want to recover their hours. They will ultimately want to return to any kind of profitability within you, the account, and they may start cutting corners, which may diminish performance in the long run. So rather than, I suppose, risking that, you may not be able to be in a position to recoup all the fees that, you know, they could be looking for, but perhaps an agreement could be something you could move towards. Now, this kind of naturally moves on from the previous point, is identifying problems. So what are those little red flags that do appear when you're working with an agency? So it's going to look deeply into this slide. It's our ways of working and identifying problems with the agency. The first point is something that drives me absolutely mad. It drives me insane when it happens: the inability to explain performance. So if I were to ask my agency account manager or rep, can you explain why the conversion rate is down this month? It wasn't down this month last year, or I can't see anything for it. And the response is something like, oh, people are shopping around. They don't know that. Those kind of responses, those kind of makey up responses are absolutely infuriating. An agency are skilled, they're metric-based people. The inability to explain performance in a metric-based environment is infuriating and unnecessary. You know, if you look deeply at the data, You can use any kind of correlation coefficient or causality to loosely, in a metric-based understanding, put some framework or foundation together to explain the performance. The inability to explain performance or vague or fluffy explanations is definitely a red flag for me, because it means that they're not really sure what's going on, but they're spending the budget and they're charging management. So inability to explain performance is something that you should push back on and just challenge them. You don't know what I mean is you challenge them to look deep at the data. Say, well, what about this? Use your own intuition from your closeness with your customer, with your target market, with your industry to say, well, what about this? So that inability to explain performance is something that can really set a red flag up. Transparency with tools and finances. No agency should refuse to give you access to Google Analytics or Facebook or Google Ads or Twitter ads or any of the tools, at least on read-only mode. So they may say, well, we don't give it to any of our clients in case they break it. But the fact is that they can give you an access level that allows you to just see the bottom line metrics, that allows you to sense check what the media you are paying, say Google, is matching the media that is at the bottom of your invoice, if you haven't agreed to putting media fees or margin on your agency agreement. So transparency with tools and finances is very important. Now the next one is more of a subtle thing. The next one is quite subtle. So switching account managers very often. You're kind of being moved around the agency. What does that mean? That means that there's no continuity of the account. You may be going up and down different levels of your point of contact, because maybe you're less valued in the agency. Maybe they've won a new client and suddenly you're bumped down to a second tier client. So you have a bunch of juniors on your account. Moving account managers often is a subtle red flag for something that may be a problem with the relationship with the agency. Ask the question, see can you resolve it. It's an open business discussion, and asking the question can hopefully resolve anything that does identify itself as a problem. And the final point is around committing to deadlines. So when it's really important to commit to deadline and delivery. So when we expect this to be done, if deadlines are missed, why were they missed? Again, it goes back to the briefing section. What are the dependencies? What are the timelines? Who's waiting for who? What are any kind of unforeseen things that may happen that could disrupt it? But the other thing is really to avoid open deadlines. We'll get that done soon, or it'll be done in a while, when you really need a next week deadline. So commitment to deadlines is something that would be considered a problem. Inability to explain performance, big red flag. Transparency, tools and finances, big red flag. Switching account managers often, quite subtle. And committing to deadlines, it's something that really as part of the relationship should be built in. Now you can set expectations around your agency. So it's going to look at this in a little bit more detail here as well. So we can collaborate realistically. That relationship model is you collaborate to set realistic results and timelines for your budget. Results, timelines, budget. These are essential aspects of any kind of agency campaign, plan and relationship. Understanding what you're trying to achieve, what can be achieved collectively in the different channels within the budgets and time frame, and assign the responsibilities to the different stakeholders. I, the client, will do this, so you, the agency, can complete this. It's not just a one-sided game. You are working in collaborative arrangement, and try and foster it that they are not afraid to ask you for things, that they will ask you for what they need based on the plan. Have that open dialogue. It makes it work a lot better. Now, to set deliverables, and this is because we're a metric-based industry, you can use historical performance, good and bad, to set deliverables. So just critique past campaigns from your current agency or previous agency. Like, this is what we consider success, and this is what we're not so interested in. That allows them to focus their time on working on what you know is successful, and limiting the amount of resource that you cease as ineffectual or not important or not relevant to what you're trying to achieve. So using historical data and performance, bad and good, to set those expectations, it gives them a flavor for what you're after. Likewise, and this is very much a client obligation, try not to rush a creative brief or a media or any kind of campaign brief. So the benefit of writing a brief for us, you, me, everyone, the client, is it gives you an in-depth understanding of what you're trying to achieve as you tease out with writing the different tasks and deliverables. This allows you to understand the framework, what we're trying to do here, you know. And finally, I'm just going to finish off, and you know yourself on this, pay the agency, don't look for free work. Asking them to work for free is never a good thing to do. They will build a little bit of fat in where they will do some free time. You'll find in time to time that you're paying for hours that haven't been delivered as well. That's the ebb and flow of an agency relationship. Understanding that is the landscape is key to, I suppose, being transparent with how everyone gets paid here. So setting those expectations, because they need to know they're going to get paid for a load of work they're going to do, because they'll put the entire agency on it. And if you know, so setting that expectation is absolutely essential. Now, we have gone through a lot at this point. My production team behind the camera right now are dutifully managing the questionnaires. So in the GoToMeeting that you guys are attending, there's a chat box where you can ask me any questions, and we'll come to those at the end. So throughout this webinar, as you see things that I might have said or you want to know more on, certainly put in a question, and I'll address this at the end of the webinar. Likewise, you can email membership@digitalmarketinginstitute.com with your questions, and we'll get to that too. Of course, I know there's a number of people from agencies and from client side, and probably media owners too, on this webinar. So I hope you're all getting something from this as we explore the landscape. And for our members and membership people, do remember that if you are doing a CPD program, that for the hour of this webinar, you will get 1 credit towards your CPD, and everyone will be sent a certificate of attendance on completion of this webinar in email too. I'll reiterate this at the end just for clarity. So we've really come to the end of the background of our webinar. And what I have at the end here is our agency checklist. This is a checklist that I've put together. These are questions that you can ask your agency to probe a bit deeper about their strategy, what they're trying to achieve, challenge them to write down in words all the great work they're doing or why they're doing stuff. So sometimes you find people are doing stuff and it's great, it's delivering great results, but they haven't explicitly written down the mechanics or process around why it's doing so good. So this agency checklist challenges the agency to come back and explain in a clear, concise manner why they're doing the things they are doing. So let's begin with budget. So simple question to ask your agency is, what are the budget strategies and budget splits across the channels? So why are you spending certain budgets in certain channels, and what's the strategy around that? Explain the key channel KPIs, and are they robust enough? So are you measuring the right channels with the right KPIs? Are you using last click attribution for display when it should be an awareness, reach and frequency based KPI? So understanding and explaining to you, the client, when you look in Google Analytics, you're seeing no conversions from your display campaign. Is that bad? Well, actually, it's more an awareness piece. So in fact, that is the wrong KPI. We use this KPI. Ask them what KPIs they use for the different channels. The last point on this slide is an efficiency one. So not every single campaign converts, say in search or something like that. So can you explain the value of a low conversion campaign? Why are we spending money on campaigns that aren't delivering any sales revenue or whatever? Now, they may have an explanation. They may say, well, look, this feeds the funnel, or we've got an uptick in brand paid search from our display. So it's not around what you're seeing in the bottom line here with the display. It is around the uptick we have seen in search over the past number of months. So I've detailed explanations for all of these points on the checklist. So that's the first 3 points. Now, as we move to the next 3 points on the checklist, the first point here that you should ask the agency is explain the bidding strategy. What is your bidding strategy, say for paid search or for your social channels? Is it manual CPC? Is it a conversion-based automated bid, awareness or traffic? What exactly is the bidding strategy? Does that relate to those KPIs that we've already asked about? Does that relate to the budget strategy? Ask them what is their bidding strategy and does it tie into all of those different features we've already asked? The next 2 points are critical for me. So explain and justify the device and location strategies. Why are you investing in markets that are low value? And is that the right amount of budget to invest in a market that doesn't deliver a lot of revenue or conversions or leads or traffic or just looks like you don't sell a lot into? So explain the location strategy in terms of how much budget's going into each. Likewise, devices, you will find that desktop is a higher conversion rate than mobile. So why are we spending so much on mobile? What is that doing? Should the device strategy be tilted more towards desktop rather than mobile? So explain and justify the location strategy and the device strategies in terms of the budget that we allocate to each. The final one on this slide is a creative piece around what is the best performing call to action. So we should be testing CTAs, and have they agreed? Have they documented all of the CTAs that they're using? What is the best performing in terms of clicks, conversion? What is the best performing in terms of engagement? And what works across the different channels? A grid of all of the different CTAs that you're using can be very helpful in terms of just tying in what works where and how to manage your creative strategy going forward. The final slide of our agency checklist is just some longer term issues. So because nothing is viewed in a silo month on month, ask the agency what is the year-to-date cost and conversion metrics, so you can see the trends over time rather than that's what this month looks like, that's what this month looks like, and that's what this month looks like. Because when you see things in silos, you might see a 2% decline in 1 month, following on from a 2% decline the previous month, following on from a 4% decline in the previous month. So on the offhand, it's 3 months of small declines, but compound that over a number of months, you might discover that it's been a 25% decline. So that is why it's key to understand what the year-to-date metrics are. Is this at an acceptable level, and is that used to drive efficiency in your channels? I've said it before. Can you grant us the client, access to all platforms and analytics on read only or whatever? So they're seeing what you're seeing, and that's an important part of the transparency piece, to build that relationship and that commercial agreement that you have with that agency. Now, the last point I have here is mainly to do with paid campaigns and kind of to do with search. So explain the visibility and strategy for channels and keywords. So what's the split between your paid search versus your Facebook? And then within paid search, what's, say, the split between your brand and your generic? And what I mean by visibility is how often your ad is seen. So ask about impression share. Impression share is in a paid search metric. So if you have a 50% impression share, your ad shows up 50% of the time that people look for that keyword. If you have 100% impression share, you show up 100% of the time. So ask them why we have certain percentage impression share levels. Ideally, you want high conversion, low CPA keywords and campaigns to have high impression shares, and assisting and lower conversion campaigns to have lower impression shares. That just makes business sense. When you come to the top of funnel channels like paid display, like Facebook, social media, ask about reach and frequency. So when you ask about reach and frequency, that's about the visibility of those channels. So this agency checklist are 9 or 10 good questions that you can just ask the agency to get a feel for how they approach the work, what they're doing, and it challenges them to write down the processes and justification for the great work that they're hopefully doing for you. this really brings a close to our webinar for the moment. We're going to move now to a Q&A session. So I hope a number of questions have come in throughout the webinar and we'll be able to ask them. So we're just going to take a quick break and I'll be back in a few minutes when my producer Caroline passes the questions on to me. Thank you very much. Welcome back, everyone. As you can see, I've acquired a sitting position and a laptop to look at the questions. So I'm just going to look at these now and hopefully answer any queries that you've had. So I'm going to begin with Lubna, who says, why should we deal with these kind of agencies? We're studying with digital marketing. It's not one of our skills to know what they want and what to do with them instead of using them. So the thing about, I suppose, agency management is while you may end up working for an agency, if you end up working for an agency, the Digital Marketing Institute is, your direction there, but not everyone will be actually who does the certificate digital marketing diploma courses, etc. Will be twisting the levers and pulling the dials on everything. So agency management is important. So agencies, and why you should deal with agencies is if you don't have the resource in-house, which just sometimes employers may not have, you just quickly can hire an agency, and at that point you're inheriting their skill sets and all of their expertise in one go for a fee, so it's cost efficient. At the start of the presentation, I did show reasons to work with an agency, and this webinar will be recorded. It will be put up for everyone to look at again. If there was something that we said and you just want to go over, the presentation will be sent around to everyone, so it's all there for everyone. So Lubna, I hope that answers your question. Now Michael has a fairly lengthy question, so I'll read that out. So he would like to ask about the aspect of working with an agency and what you should in moving towards a consultative agency model. You mentioned something about making sure that NDAs and such agreements make sure your data is not used elsewhere. As someone who owns a digital marketing agency, which is specified in one vertical, how may one build a relationship without compromising this key element? Please take into account that most of my clients are direct competitors and products have a natural USPs, olive oil. Each olive oil is unique and different from, I'm not sure, to be honest, I'm not sure what this question is asking. It's so an NDA is a common thread. It's a common trust piece that you will have with anyone. And as you move towards a collaborative, working with your clients on different things, having that NDA in place gives them the trust that you're not going to share data with their clients. Now, under GDPR, you can't, and under best business practices, you really shouldn't. But an NDA is just, if you as an agency propose to a client, oh, I'll sign an NDA, that's you proactively being, on their side from the get-go. So I'm still not, I may not be answering this question correctly, Michael, but I'll try and address it in an email around to everyone thereafter. So moving on to Sonu. So fairly straightforward question. Should we expect agencies to help us out in programmatic buying? Yes, you can. Programmatic can be quite agency dependent. So there's two ways to do programmatic. And programmatic, for people who don't understand, it's a automated way of efficiently buying display banners or serving search ads or putting ads on social media, that you are using machine learning and personas and artificial intelligence to serve the ads more effectively rather than blanket throwing them out there to everyone. Programmatic is a very advanced way of serving the right ads to the right people at the right time for the best possible response. Agencies help fantastically in this, in that they may have a trading desk where they can connect directly to the ad exchanges. If that's the case, it's very transparent what ad exchanges they're using and how they use them. Going through an intermediary can be different. You may not have full visibility of what they're doing, but in short, yes, ad agencies, if they have the capabilities, would absolutely be perfect for helping you with any kind of programmatic buying. But of course, if you do the display module in the Certified Digital Marketing Professional course in us, you will have a good idea of programmatic yourself, but may not have the time. So the agency will help there. Fausto says, should the digital marketing strategy be constructed with the agency, mostly by the agency, or not at all? Kind of the middle ground there. So the strategy is a brief that comes from you. We want to achieve this next year or next quarter or whatever. They will look at the budget available, the tools that are available, new tools that are happening online, and they will recommend a strategy draft that you can then refine with them over a while. That kind of year planning is definitely a collaborative thing. You should, like, the agency should be doing probably 70% of the work, 80% of the work, and you're coming in to validate it, you're coming in to stress test it, and make sure along the way that it's feasible in terms of budgeting and what they would expect the costs to be. So it's a two-way process. Would I'd say 80% on agency, 20% on you. But yes, they should absolutely be feeding into strategy. Aya says, as a client, how can I get access to these tools if not in my account? So you ask, you simply ask, you say to the agency, your account manager, can you set me up? If you want access to Google Ads, send them a Gmail. Can you give me access to Google Analytics and Google Ads for this Gmail address on read only? And that is just the most straightforward way. When they control the accounts, they can grant access to new people at different levels. So, you know, they can give you an administrator level, they can give you a report level, they can give you a user level. So just ask, and they'll say, well, we'll need this email address for Google or this email address for Facebook or whatever. May be able to do it under the one. Don't lose that email address. It'd be really important to you. But yeah, just ask them. It's certainly something that's fairly straightforward. And then if you're looking to change the agency, will you lose all the previous data? No, you won't. It's all related into, so if you move agency, if you move your AdWords account from one agency to another agency, it should ideally be transferred across. The ownership of the AdWords should be transferred either to you or to the new agency with you as a read-only person. So you shouldn't lose any historical data. You should do every single Facebook, Google, Twitter, analytics, everything can be transferred from owner to owner, no problem. So historical data won't be lost if you, but you know, you may need to come to an arrangement or agreement with your agency about how exactly to approach that. So Gregory asks, we know it's a challenge for an agency to produce quality content as they are not the owner of our business. What advice do you have to help the agency to sound authentic and strong? What, as a business owner, should I give and provide the agency? That is an absolutely brilliant question. So because the agency are a third party, they will have an understanding of your business to a point, you know, but they will not have the level of understanding that you, the business owner, might have. So writing detailed briefs, I suppose there will come a point where you can't outsource the entire process to the agency. You will have to give feedback and give direction. So a good brief is a good starting point. Any kind of internal data, spend a bit of time with them, talk to them. The key about a collaborative relationship is there's two types of meetings you'll have with an agency. There's your chemistry meetings, which is just getting to know the people, working with them, feeling comfortable with them, because that's very important. You do work better with the people you like. And then the next thing is the more kind of business orientated meetings like briefings and different things like that. So having conversational pieces, showing them blog content, showing them stuff that other people do that might be kind of aligned or close to what you do, giving them a feel, giving them pointers, and spending time, your time, unfortunately, on writing the brief. A good brief will save everything. And then over time, it is an iterative process. They will develop a feel for what is the type of stuff you want, what is the type of stuff that works best. Metrics will tell a lot, your feedback will tell a lot, and that two-way process is essential. But yeah, any internal sales data, internal collateral, stuff that competitors are doing, stuff you just like, stuff that you have published previously, stuff that they've done that you like. That's the kind of stuff that you can point to them, giving them the direction to produce the content. It's not always perfect. It can be quite hard because an in-house person will have that extra level of intuition, but over time the relationship can develop. The key is to put the groundwork in as the client and writing a good brief. And then we have Fatima here. Should you consider an agency that provides exclusive contracts? Well, that depends. So saying that you, the client, can't work with any other agency, or that that they have exclusivity to you, is a bit restrictive. I personally would really want a very strong justification for why I would sign a contract like that. I would like to work with different suppliers. I would generally like to pick and choose who and how I work with, and having an exclusivity piece in a contract can be a little bit restrictive. Now, if it's only for a couple of months during the onboarding period or something, if there's a timeline on it, perhaps, but not necessarily an infinitum exclusivity clause in a contract. That just leads to being handcuffed and not getting anywhere. So I haven't seen any more questions come in here, but oh, I have, sorry. Oh, thanks, Darlene. You're very welcome. A couple of people have asked how to start working for an agency. Let me see. What is the most important report to ask for a digital agency? What are your most important metrics? Ask for your most important metrics by the cost that you've paid them and what the delivery has been. So generally, media cost plus fees, and your most important metrics will be your sales or your KPI or your conversion rate or something like that. Then you can work out the ROI. Anything that relates as closely as it can to relate to your commercial, your business outcome. So when you agree to work with that agency, they said these digital channels can deliver these business outcomes. So you want a report that generally shows what these business outcomes were in a metric-based fashion, like an e-commerce report or a lead report from Google Analytics or Omniture or another, and Adobe, another analytic program. If it's a straight CSV download or Excel, it may not tell you a lot. So you do want them to give you the insight, to read the tea leaves, to tell you what the data means, if it's good, bad, or indifferent, not just leaving the insight and the reading of the report up to you. It's based on what you agreed. What I like, and this is just quickly, what I like is the acquisition report. So in Google Analytics, we have the acquisition tab. Then we have the all traffic report from the channels tab. So we can see what all of my channels do: social, email, display, affiliates, whatever, what the goals were and what I paid. And then that report to me is generally the most important report, because the traffic is what the marketing does. It drives traffic. If you're content-based stuff, you may be secondary interested in the all pages report and behavior. But for me, the acquisition, all channels report based on e-commerce or based on goals is the most important report, but it may differ for you. I'm going to finish up my final question here. Okay, a couple people said thank you. You're very welcome. Okay, when working with an agency with smaller clients, is a standard practice to bill for briefing and planning sessions. It is essential to deliver good work, but to work with clients, yes, okay, and that's a fair point. So as an agency, what the agency should do in that instance is try and efficiently brief, set the expectation, because it is a two-way process. It's not just a dictative process from the client to the agency. It's a two-way communication stream of ways of working. So with smaller clients, you may not get to bill for briefing. You may not get to bill for that kind of stuff. The scoping work you, as I said in the presentation, you may not get to a invoice for, but hopefully the output will be a decent campaign where you do get some billable hours, and that's where it can go. And if the campaign doesn't materialize, build into the expectation and the relationship that, hey, we just did a load of work, can we recoup some of the hours in terms of what we put in here, and you make it something. So it's more about being open. And I say it time and time again, you have to be open about fees with your agency, because it is what's in it for them, and that's what keeps them motivated. So guys, thank you very much. I'm just going to finish off on that, but before we go, remember that anyone who attended the webinar from the membership will get a certificate of attendance and 1 hour towards the CPD if that's what you're actually doing there. Thanks for your questions, and look forward to future live webinars in the coming weeks, months, and whatever. Thank you very much.